Hello and welcome. I'm Patrick Ryan from the Tennessee World Affairs Council. Today we're talking with Christine Karbowiak, who served for 28 years with Bridgestone Corporation in a number of roles, including Chief Administrative Officer of Bridgestone Americas, Executive Vice President and Vice Chair of Bridgestone Americas, Bridgestone Corporation Chief Sustainability Officer, and member of the Global Executive Committee, and earlier in her career as the Chief Spokesman and Head of Communications. Christine, thanks for joining us today, and we look forward to learning more about your experiences with Bridgestone.
It's my pleasure, Pat. Thanks for having me.
Well, let's start at the start. You've been with Bridgestone. You were with Bridgestone for 28 years. You're retired now, enjoying your retirement in the Nashville, Tennessee area in Brentwood. But bring us back to your earlier connections with the company, and then we'll jump into the impact of Bridgestone on Tennessee and your experiences with the company here after it moved from headquarters elsewhere.
Thanks, Pat. Yeah, I started with the Bridgestone Firestone company, as it was called back then, in 1992 with their Chicago-based retail organization. At that time, the headquarters for Bridgestone Firestone had already moved to Nashville, Tennessee. So I was in one of their more remote locations. Obviously, Firestone Complete Auto Care stores, about 2,200 of them, are not an insignificant part of Bridgestone, but they were not in Nashville. So I was in their law department, and it was a tremendous educational experience. But I really didn't have a lot of contact at that point with our Japanese colleagues. But we did have obviously substantial contact with the team that was in Nashville, because that's where the headquarters was located.
And what year was that when the headquarters came? We have an evolution of Bridgestone Firestone to track through here, but give us the time frame where the company became more heavily involved in Tennessee.
Sure. So just a little bit of background. Bridgestone's first investment in Tennessee came in 1983 when they purchased, remarkably enough, a Firestone plant in Laverne, Tennessee. Their headquarters at that point, the Bridgestone headquarters, was located in California. So there was a footprint in Tennessee starting in 1983. In 1988, Bridgestone purchased the Firestone Tire and Rubber Company. And through that merger, the decision was made to move the Akron leadership team and obviously the California leadership team to a central location, and that was chosen as Nashville. We had obviously the facility in Laverne was already here. There was a plant being constructed in McMinnville in 1991-ish, 91. And so they moved the headquarters to Nashville in 1991. Great location. I think everyone was excited about the opportunity to get away from some of those northern winters.
Well, yeah, I'm sure. And Bridgestone actually is a long-standing company in Japan, and I think 1900 was its origins, earliest traces.
Firestone was incorporated in August of 1900 in Akron. Okay. Bridgestone was incorporated in 1931 in Japan. And what's interesting is there was a real focus on the founders' sort of goals. The Bridgestone founder was Shojiro Ishibashi, on looking to becoming a global company. So he chose a name that he thought would be attractive to a global audience. So instead of Ishibashi Company or some company that phrasing that has the word Nippon in it, he chose the name Bridgestone. And so even from the very beginning of sort of the founder's focus, he was seeing that this was an opportunity to take his company onto a global stage. And in fact, we have a photo in the archives of Shojiro Ishibashi and some of his executives standing before a Ford Zephyr that was shod with Firestone tires that was purchased and imported into Japan prior to World War II. so that they could study American vehicles to see what would be appropriate. So I thought, it's again, the global focus was from the very beginning. It's just a matter of, how does one evolve into a globalized company? And the acquisition of Firestone in '88 was really that first really, really big step towards globalization.
But wasn't it later in the '80s that the company struck out on a strategic initiative for become a global company?
Well, that was the Firestone acquisition. So
Okay.
there had been steps in advance of that. For example, the purchase of the Firestone plant in Laverne in 1983, obviously the establishment of a sales office in California for the Bridgestone brand. So yet clearly there was a focus on globalizing, but really what pushed it forward at a much more accelerated pace was the acquisition of, obviously, Firestone had been around since 1900 and had a global footprint. They had facilities in Christchurch, New Zealand. They had facilities in Venezuela, in Argentina, Mexico, Canada, so Africa. Firestone, Harvey Firestone actually established the world's largest rubber farm in Liberia, West Africa in 1926. So by joining with Firestone, Bridgestone immediately had a very large and significant global presence.
Okay, let's talk a little bit more about the Tennessee footprint. You mentioned Laverne in 1983. What other plants were acquired or built in Tennessee that have had a lasting impact on what happens in those communities?
Well, I think that obviously Laverne was a very key investment for Bridgestone. There's a plant in Dyersburg, Tennessee. But what was really important was also the investment that the company made in McMinnville in Warren County. The construction of, excuse me, a world-class truck and bus tire facility that opened in 1991, I believe it was. Significant investment, could have gone anywhere. But the company's decision was to place it in Warren County. Really good workforce, one of the largest employers even to date in Warren County. Solid workforce, great attitude, and the company wanted to invest in a place where they knew that they could grow. And that turned out to be a really good investment on their part. The Warren County plant continues to be probably the best truck and bus tire plant in the Bridgestone portfolio. So great investment, great opportunity for the community, but also great opportunity for the company.
And that continues down to today, the commitment to the community and the jobs that have been brought there.
Absolutely. And what's really interesting, a little sidebar note, the Warren County plant has always been focused on the community. And I would say probably a little bit more than 10 years ago, they established a wildlife habitat on the plant's sort of outside footprint. And they decided to grow it. And what they've got now is something called the Beach, which is intended for middle schoolers in Warren County. It's called the Bridgestone Environmental Education Classroom and Habitat. And middle schoolers come, and it is now part of the Warren County curriculum to learn about environment and conservation and how nature and people need to live together and in synergy. It's a great opportunity, and I think anyone you speak to at the plant is tremendously proud of the fact that they continue to give back to the community through that particular facility.
So it sounds like Bridgestone is a very good neighbor in Warren County.
We hope so. We hope that the neighbors believe that, but I think it's been a great partnership, the community and the company. Okay,
moving forward, that was the early '90s, the establishment of, I think it's the largest plant in the world for truck tires.
It is. I don't know if it's the largest, but it's definitely one of the better ones. It's probably the best.
Very good. Okay, let's move forward with developments in the company. We know that there was a centennial in the year 2000. Can you talk about the centennial, and we also know that around that time there was a Firestone tire recall. Give us just a little understanding of what was happening there.
Well, let me just back up just a little bit. I think it's important to know that when Firestone was acquired and was merged with Bridgestone, the Firestone brand had not been on its ascendancy. And Bridgestone invested in bringing the Firestone brand back. It is an iconic brand in the Americas and has a long life. The company was founded in 1900. And the management at Bridgestone realized that this was an asset that had been severely underutilized and chose to invest in bringing the brand back. One of the important steps that they took was to bring Firestone back into open wheel racing with kart and IndyCar. And to this day, Firestone is now just linked tightly with IndyCar and with the Indianapolis 500. They are the sole tire supplier, race tire supplier to IndyCar. And it's a great marketing opportunity and it's a great partnership. So Firestone has a long history and had been working very hard to the management team to rebuild the Firestone brand. And unfortunately, well, let me back up again. Firestone Centennial was in 2000. And the goal was to celebrate the fact that this iconic American brand was hitting the 100-year mark. Unfortunately, that was also the year that in August of 2000, the Firestone brand recalled 6.5 million Firestone tires due to concerns about tread separation. And as we often say, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. And we do believe that obviously this was resolved appropriately. And going forward, I think the changes that occurred with the company, with its original equipment manufacturer relationships, ultimately has really evolved the company into a stronger organization. And it allowed it to really develop a different footprint. So I think that, again, one needs to simply focus on what you can learn from situations and move forward.
Okay, and at the time of the recall, you were the chief spokesperson and
yes,
I was the communications.
As I mentioned before, I started in Chicago, but I moved to Nashville in 1997. And at the end of 98, I was given the opportunity to become the head of communications and head of government affairs for Bridgestone Americas. And as the head of communications and also the head of government affairs, that was my job, was to be the person who responded to inquiries on behalf of the company with respect to what was going on a day-to-day basis. And it was an interesting opportunity to learn the PR business in trial by fire.
Including a grilling on the Today Show with Katie Couric and
yeah, that would have been August 10th of 2000. But it was again, I think the training that I received and the learning and the team effort really that went into moving the company out of crisis and into really managing its destiny and coming up with a solution and having the support of the community was critical. And whether that was the mayor or whether it was the governor, there was tremendous support for the company, both in our home state and in our home city, but also in other states where we've had a significant footprint, like North Carolina and South Carolina.
So moving closer to where we are now, the relationship with Tennessee continued with those key plants. And tell us about the bringing the pieces together from around the country to Nashville.
As I mentioned earlier, the retail headquarters was located in a suburb just outside of Chicago. And there were other parts of the business, the Firestone Industrial Products and Firestone Building Products, that were located in a suburb just outside of Indianapolis. And the decision was made in conjunction with realizing that our current headquarters in Nashville was too tight. We had outgrown that space. But the thought also was, we're having these businesses that are remote from the headquarters, and there was a significant thought process that went around, what are the benefits of bringing those businesses, sort of closer to the headquarters? And the thought was, this would provide an opportunity for team members to get a better connection to the headquarters. They would become maybe better job opportunities because they would be more visible. They would learn more about what was going on and what potential opportunities were available to them in a group where we were all in a group setting. And so the decision was made that we would take a look at, okay, if we're going to be bringing everybody together, and we've already outgrown our space, where do we want to put the headquarters? And so we embarked on a study. The team and I looked at, we started with 10 cities across the US and narrowed it down to 5, and then narrowed it down to 3, and then narrowed it down to 2. And frankly, Tennessee and Nashville stood head and shoulders above the other challengers, whether it is because of the great business climate that Tennessee and Nashville offered, the great sort of social environment that it offers our teammates, the cultural opportunities, the vibrancy. So really the decision was back in 2016 to bring everybody to Nashville, and let's all work together in the downtown. And I do think, don't quote me, I may be wrong on this, but I do think that Bridgestone was the first major brand to bring their headquarters location to downtown Nashville. And I think that speaks a lot for the city and for the vibrancy of the downtown region, the downtown area in particular.
Well, and not only the first big company to come downtown, but perhaps a magnet, because we now see relocations of from far and wide of major corporations that are moving into Nashville Yards and downtown Fifth and Broad. So I suspect that there's some attractiveness when people look around and say, well, look what's happening in downtown Nashville.
Yeah, it's there was definitely a vibrancy when we were looking to site the facility, but it's really taken off now. And the unfortunate part is, because of the pandemic, we've lost a couple of years of the ability to really enjoy what downtown Nashville has to offer. And I know that the team in the building, in the tower, is looking forward to the day when there can be a lot more activity in the facility, and we can bring more folks downtown back again to enjoy all the amenities that downtown Nashville has to offer.
Well, tell us just a little bit about the impact that Bridgestone has had on Tennessee and Nashville. You talked about the bringing in the jobs from around the country. Give us a sense of what the scope of that is at the headquarters level.
There were about 1,100 people that were already located in the space that was near the airport, which is where the old headquarters for Bridgestone Americas was. And then we brought about another 600 jobs from retail, from industrial products, from building products to Nashville during the consolidation. And so that really was a great opportunity, we think, to contribute to the economic vibrancy of the region. Folks come, they buy homes, they spend money, they invest in their community, they contribute to their community through volunteers. So it's been, I think, a good benefit for both Bridgestone, the company, but also for the community to have engaged, excited folks who really want to be in this community.
Well, tell us a little bit about the support to the community. We know that there's a big arena downtown with the Bridgestone name on it, and other signs of engagement with local and regional charities. Can you give us a sense, anecdotal sense of what the scope of the involvement in the community, the areas that are targeted, what kinds of things Bridgestone seeks to accomplish in that vein?
Well, I think Bridgestone is always, and its team, frankly, have always been committed to giving back to the communities that we call home and making them better places, even better places to live. So whether it is through marketing relationships, as you mentioned, with the Bridgestone Arena, with the Predators, or through the Bridgestone Americas Trust Fund, which contributes to philanthropic opportunities and programs, both in Nashville regionally, but then also nationally. If you've watched Tennessee Crossroads, you've seen that Bridgestone Americas Trust Fund has been a proud supporter of that program for decades. I believe since probably even before I took over the government affairs program, NPT has been one of the longest standing organizations to which we have been contributing. But organizing blood drives, doing the Cumberland River Dragon Boat Race, and contributing to the Cumberland River Compact through those sorts of team building activities, but also that raise funds for the organization, and encouraging teammates to become a part of the community and be active. So I've been a member of the Japan America Society, I think probably since 2000. And it was my privilege at one point to serve as chair of the Japan America Society. It was a really exciting time because that was when the Southeast US Japan Conference actually came to Nashville. And we were able to host the Southeast US states and representatives of the Japanese government and Japanese companies to come and celebrate at the annual meeting the relationship between Tennessee and the Southeast states and Japan. And that was a great opportunity. It was a lot of fun too, but it builds those relationships, it builds those contacts. And if you don't believe that it's all about relationships, then I have to disagree with you. But
and the relationships and the impact in Tennessee, we could say is jobs. It's brought prosperity to places like McMinnville and Laverne and elsewhere around the state, suppliers. So as we wrap up here, Christine, what would you like to leave people with in terms of understanding the scope of the impact of Bridgestone in this region?
Well, I think that it's not just Bridgestone, but it's generally the investment of Japanese companies in Tennessee has made a significant difference. You hear that Japanese foreign investment is enormous in Tennessee. I think it's either first or second in the nation. There are times when California, I think, may exceed Tennessee, but it's really close. And all of those companies investing in high-paying, high-technology jobs, providing opportunities for people in the communities to advance, to have, obviously better lives. And the give back to the companies is that they have a very strong workforce and they have a very friendly, business-oriented government, that allows the companies to thrive. So I think it's a very, very positive win-win situation, both for the communities, for the citizens, for Nashville, for Bridgestone, and for the other Japanese companies.
Well, we've been talking with Christine Karbowiak, who has retired from Bridgestone Americas. She previously served as the Chief Administrative Officer at Bridgestone Americas, the Executive Vice President and Vice Chair of Bridgestone Americas, the Bridgestone Corporation Chief Sustainability Officer, and a member of the Global Executive Committee. And now she's learning how to decompress after 28 years of going 150 miles an hour on a good set of tires.
There you go.
Christine, thank you so much for spending time with us. And we really appreciate learning more about Bridgestone and its impact on Tennessee and what Tennessee has given back to the company. So thank you so much.
Pat, thanks for having me. I enjoyed the conversation. You have a great rest of the day.
Great. Thanks. Talk to you soon.
Thank you. Bye-bye.